Hello and welcome to the channel. I will tell you interesting scary stories from Reddit and not only. Do not forget to support the author of the story. I will leave his credits in the description. I also hope for your support of my channel in the form of likes and comments. I really appreciate it. Get comfortable in your bed, put on your headphones, and turn off the lights. It's going to be a night of nightmares. We're starting. This story doesn't start with a princess locked in a tower or a brave prince looking to reclaim his kingdom. It starts with me in my aunt's tiny guest room, listening to music on my phone. I wanted to just forget everything and everyone, but fate had other plans. The sounds of feet bounding up the hallway broke me out of my trance. I groaned to myself. Of course, it was my little cousin, the always peppy Shannon. "Hi, Erin," she said brightly. "Do you want to play witches with me?" Shannon waved her little wand for emphasis. She was dressed up in a Glinda Halloween costume complete with wand and crown. "No," I said flatly. I wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone or do anything. My parents had sent me to my Aunt Nora's house in the Catskill Mountains to help me to deal with my sister's accident. "Please, please, please," she whined in a way only 8 years old can. Shannon looked at me with pleading eyes. I could say no, but that would at best result in her asking me again and again. At worst, could cause a temper tantrum. "Fine," I sighed. I got off the bed and went down the stairs as Shannon cheered behind me. When we got to the living room, my Aunt Nora and our grandmother were sitting and watching TV. Well, Aunt Nora was anyway. Our grandmother seemed to be sleeping in a recliner. She lived with Aunt Nora, Uncle Steve, and Shannon. Steve was deployed as a soldier at the time. "Where are you girls going?" Aunt Nora asked. "We're going to go play," Shannon giggled. I nodded, showing I actually, if reculantly, was agreeing. "That's wonderful," Aunt Nora said. In addition to having looked after me, she was also worried about Shannon being lonely now that her dad was gone. Seeing us play together must have been so relieving for her. "I'll make sure she's safe," I mumbled, as we made our way to the door. Suddenly I heard my grandmother call, "Stay away from the fairy ring." I looked back to see her staring at us with an extremely serious look on her face. Fairy ring? I didn't know what that was. "Oh, don't worry, Ma," Aunt Nora said. "They'll be careful, right, girls?" She looked at me with a face that read humor her. "Okay, I'll make sure to avoid it," I said, now somewhat weirded out. To be honest, playing with Shannon was actually kind of fun. It was beautiful outside, and the little scenarios Shannon would come up with were kind of cute. For the first time since Penny's accident, I actually felt a little happy. We were playing tag, or having a witch battle, as Shannon called it, when Shannon suddenly stopped. She was looking at something with a mix of fear and reverence. "What is it?" I asked. She pointed at what she was looking at. It was a somewhat large circle of mushrooms. The grass inside the circle was dead. I had seen something like that before. "It's the fairy ring," Shannon whispered, her eyes still on the circle. "Oh," I said plainly. "Is it dangerous?" I honestly didn't think I would see it, given Aunt Nora didn't really seem to care about it or explain it. Still, it was a strange sight. "Grandma says the fairies dance there," Shannon explained, saying it softly, like she didn't want the fairies to hear her. "She says if you bother fairies, they'll come and steal you away." I almost laughed. Fairies? Really? She might as well have said unicorns were vicious beasts. "Aren't fairies nice?" I asked, humoring her. "Grandma says they're bad," Shannon said, matter-of-factly. I guess when you're little, you'll believe anything adults tell you. Can we leave, Aaron? I'm scared. She looked around, seemingly afraid the fairies would appear. I wanted to calm her down. Don't worry, fairies are friendly, I said. But Grandma said... Grandma was talking about old fairies. New fairies are nice, I explained. If Shannon still believed in fairies, at least I could make her less afraid of them. New fairies? Shannon looked confused. Yeah, like Tinkerbell. I went on further. They help kids, maybe even grant them wishes. Really? Shannon was excited now, a smile forming on her face. Yep, I said. As long as you're good and believe in them, they'll come. So we should wake up the fairies? Shannon asked. Wake them up? Before Shannon could answer the question, my aunt called us back in for dinner. As we were walking back, Shannon asked me something. Your necklace is so pretty, she said. Can I wear it? No, I said quickly. Penny and I got our matching butterfly necklaces at a carnival when we were both 9. Penny liked her necklace the most. She said it was her good luck charm. She wore it at her driving test. She wore it during final exams. She wore it coming home from that stupid party where she just had to drive drunk. Grief is a cruel thing. You can feel fine 1 second, then have everything come crashing down on you again. Let's go, I said suddenly and sharply. But I want to play some more. Now. I began walking away. I looked back to Shannon, following slowly, eyes looking towards with a pout on her face. We got home and my aunt picked up on my sour attitude. My grandmother looked grumpy as always, and Shannon just kept looking at me, at my necklace in particular. I went to bed without another word. I fell asleep quickly. In my dream, Penny and I were at a beach. Penny was swimming in the ocean while I was sitting in the sand. A wave suddenly swept her away. I yelled her name and ran into the sea. She was reaching out for me. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't reach her. Water filled my lungs, but I couldn't stop. A bang rang through the air, and I've been ripped out of the dream. I woke with a start. It sounded like someone or something was in my room. I lifted my head to look around. After my eyes adjusted to the darkness, it looked like a small figure was in the room with me. I let out a small yelp and quickly turned on my lamp. I then saw Shannon looking at me with a look of fear in her eyes. I soon understood that fear when I saw what she was holding. My necklace. What are you doing? I growled. Nothing, Shannon said nervously. I just thought since you were asleep that you could steal my stuff, I yelled. I didn't care who heard me. Anger was consuming me. Well, maybe it's 'cause you're so mean, Shannon shouted back, stomping her foot on the ground. She was clearly unwilling to lose this fight. Oh, so this my fault now? What's going on here? Aunt Nora asked. She was in her nightgown and looked extremely confused. She was trying to steal my necklace, I yelled. All you do is sit in your room all day. You barely talk to me. Penny was always nicer than you, Shannon screamed. I wish she was here instead of you. I stopped everything at once. I felt like I had just been punched. I wish she was here instead of you. I wish she was here instead of you. I wish she was here instead of you. Shannon, Aunt Nora shouted. What? It's true, everyone thinks so, Shannon shouted, still defiant. Everyone wishes I was dead, I whispered back. It wasn't a question. I knew everyone felt that way. Sometimes, I even felt that way. Shannon was the only one brave enough to say it. What? Shannon asked. I just get out, I said flatly. Aunt Nora went to comfort me, but I quickly moved back into my room like a cornered animal. I said get out, I screamed. As soon as Shannon and my aunt were in the hallway, I slammed the door. I breathed heavily for a bit. I soon started shaking. A sob broke from my throat. I sobbed again and again, curled up against the door. Penny should be here. Penny was fun. Penny was nice. Not like me. At least not like the new me. I had become a creature of grief and anger and nothing else. I wish it would have been me, I mumbled. I don't know how long I stayed like that. The spell was broken when I heard a faint knock at the door, followed by a small voice. "Aaron?" Shannon asked. All the anger was gone from her voice. "Aaron, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. I just miss Penny too." Her voice started to wobble. "Please talk to me." I just stared at the door, bitterness rising within me. "Aaron, please," Shannon begged, and I could tell she was crying. Her voice sounded sincere, but I didn't care. Finally, I spit out, "You want me to forgive you? Fine. Bring Penny back, and I'll do it." Shannon was quiet for a moment. The silence was broken when Shannon asked, "How?" The corners of my mouth lifted into a dark and sad parody of a smile. "Go to that ring thing and ask the fairies." After a long stretch of silence, Shannon said, "Okay." I could hear her running down the hall. "Stupid brat," I mumbled as I slowly made my way to my bed. I laid down for what seemed like hours. "Girl, open the door." I recognized my grandmother's voice. It was hard not to, with her faded Irish accent. My grandmother rarely sounded this agitated. "Go away," I yelled back. After a second, the door opened. I turned towards the door, confused, only to see my grandmother looking at me, with a key in her hand and a strange look on her face. It looked like a mixture of concern, anger, and determination. "What did you tell Shannon?" she asked. I was getting a little weirded out. My grandmother normally seemed to be lost in her only little world. This was the most focused I've ever seen her. "I just told her to go away," I mumbled. "Is that all?" she asked. "Well, I told her to go ask the fairies for my forgiveness." I didn't tell her about saying Shannon should ask them to bring Penny back. That felt too personal, now that I was thinking more clearly. "Did she say she was going to the fairy ring?" she asked, looking me dead in the eye. Yes." I was getting more and more confused as this conversation went on. Grandma's face lit up with terror. "Do you know where the fairy ring is?" She was shaking my shoulders now. Yeah," I said nervously. "I think so." "You need to go get her, now," my grandma said. "The fair folk will get her." "What? Wait, fairies?" I asked. "Really? Grandma's fairies aren't Suddenly, my grandmother loudly slammed her hand on the table. "All the other generations have forgotten, but I know," she said seriously. "I know their tricks. I know what they'll do. We need to get Shannon back. Now." Her eyes were glued to mine the entire time. Maybe it was the guilt getting to me. Maybe I was feeling just a bit unsettled by her words. I sneaked down the stairs, avoiding my Aunt Nora. I could hear her panicky voice talking to someone on her phone. It sounded like she was talking to 911. The guilt in my chest grew heavier. I walked out the door into the night. The darkness made the forest look so different. What was once beautiful green scenery was now almost unseeable, with only the moon providing light. I was almost disoriented by the darkness, trying to use trees and large rocks to recognize where I was going. Finally, I found my way to the fairy ring. I was relieved, but it soon turned into panic when I couldn't see Shannon anywhere. I looked around, calling her name. I almost left when I heard a high, childlike giggle. "Hello?" I called. "Who's there?" "Shannon." I walked towards the noise when I felt myself step on something. I looked closer and realized I had stepped on one of the mushrooms that made up the ring. I was standing in the center of the dead grass. Suddenly the laughing got louder. There was also new laughter. different voices coming from all over, all of them laughing at me. It was so high-pitched that it made my ears hurt. More than that, it sounded wrong, like it was choppy and distorted. I covered my ears and stumbled back into the center of the ring. I then felt like I was falling very slowly. I looked down to find my legs sinking into the ground. I tried to pull them out, but it just made me sink faster. The laughing got louder, and when I looked down, I saw eyes coming from every shadow. They were a bright yellow, shining in the dark. I had found the source of the wicked laughter. Before I could do anything else, I was pulled and went down into the ground. It felt like crashing through a screen door. When I opened my eyes, I was blinded. I opened my eyes just a crack. It went from being totally dark to it being a bright day. My terror only grew when I realized I was in a completely different place. It didn't even look like anywhere I've ever been. The grass was white, and the sky was a light violet. The bright sun bathed everything in a harsh light. There were no trees as far as I can see. I was so in shock I couldn't think clearly. Well, what do we have here? A voice called. A big Eve and a little Eve in the same day? What fun! I gasped and tried to find the source of the voice. Who's there? I asked, trying to sound as confident as I could. It still came out shaky. Over here! I looked behind me and was nearly shocked to silence again. It had the face of an old man and the body of a human, but it was covered in thick hair all over its body. The creature was smiling in an amused way, like a baby deer trying to take its first steps. Oh, I'm dreaming, I said, after a long moment. Then I got up and walked away, covering my ears and closing my eyes. I am dreaming, and I will wake up and everything will be back to normal. I heard a low chuckle from the creature. The hairy thing spoke again. You mortal folk love to deny things you don't like? Okay, Minifoot. I turned around. If this is real, tell me where I am. My fear had turned into anger. This night was already bad enough, but this was just insane. Why, it's Tir Na Nog, the land of the young. The hairy man threw his arms out wide, as if showing this strange place off. What he called this land sounded familiar. Then I remembered some of the stories my grandmother had told me. Land of the young? As in the place where fairies live? I asked. We prefer fair folk, the little hairy man said. So, the specific name for my kind is hobgoblin. You Eves and Adams must have forgotten about us. But yes, I am part of the forgotten race, he said. Adams and Eves? What does that mean? I asked. That's who you folks are descended from, right? The hobgoblin said. Wait, so when you said there was a big Eve and a little Eve, does that mean there was another girl who came here? I told Shannon to go ask the fairies to bring Penny back. If she truly thought fairies were real and lived at the fairy ring, I have heard whispers that a human child stumbled into the realm. Poor thing. The hobgoblin sighed. The Seedy have probably found her by now. That girl is my cousin, I said. Who are the Seedy? Are they dangerous? The Seedy are tricky creatures, the hobgoblin said. They like to toy with humans by making them work towards wishes they will either never grant or twist to their own liking. I felt cold dread drip over me. I had told Shannon to go ask the fairies for Penny. Now she might be doing just that. Only instead of Tinkerbell it was some strange creature that is feared even by their own kind. My chest started to feel heavy and panicked. Thoughts raced through my mind. Where are they? I asked. In those tall dunes over there. The hobgoblin pointed to them. You plan on going there? Yes, it's my fault she's here in the first place. I said, besides I thought about when I first realized I would never see Penny again. If Shannon's in real danger, then I might not ever see her again either. Just the thought set off fear and grief through me. I can't lose anyone else. The hobgoblin seemed to have some understanding of that. I wish the best of luck, he said. He started to walk before he stopped and turned to face me once again. Before I go, I need to tell you how to play the Sita games. Okay, I said, hesitant, but eager to learn. My grandmother kept on telling me how fairies were evil. I needed to know how they operated. I need some payment first, the hobgoblin. Do you agree to my terms? Well, I didn't have much of a choice now, did I? Fine, I agreed. First mistake, Eve, the hobgoblin said. What? Before I could finish, I felt a deep, burning pain on my left hand. I looked down at it, only to see my ring finger was gone. I couldn't really process it for a second. I looked at the hobgoblin, as if he would have answers, only to see him hold a finger my finger, and wearing a haughty expression. It finally hit me. I screamed and fell to the ground. What did you do? I yelled. The hobgoblin just rolled his eyes. You humans are always so dramatic, he mumbled, and gullible. He started to walk toward me, only to stop when he saw I was inching away from him with every step he took. You see, Sita get you by asking for something. They always phrase it in a way that allows them to take much more than you were bargaining for. The hobgoblin lectured. That's why I was able to take your finger. You never said what I could or couldn't take. I was still shaking. My grandmother said fairies never play fair. The hobgoblin smiled with bitter humor. She's a knowledgeable woman. You might want this back. I felt a stinging pain where my ring finger was and saw it was back, just it had never left. Thank you, I said, my voice shaky. I still wasn't sure I could trust him after that stunt he pulled, but I had to ask him. Why are you helping me? The hobgoblin looked at me for a moment. My kind are created from a union between a mortal and a member of the fair folk. He smiled without humor again. Maybe I just want to see one of you win, just once. I ran towards the dune as fast as I could. When I got to it, I saw a small cave. There was strange music. It sort of sounded like the Irish music I heard Grandma listening to from time to time, only like instruments I've never heard of. I looked into the cave and saw a small figure dancing around a fire. I realized that it was Shannon. She looked so frail. She was crying while she was dancing. When I looked closer, I realized her feet were bleeding. I looked at the figure watching, and my blood went cold. It looked like a woman with silvery blonde hair. Her skin was as pale as fresh snow. Her face was beautiful. But there was something wrong with it, painfully perfect. The figure looked up and made eye contact with me. Her eyes were pure white so much they almost blended in with her face. I actually flinched. It was like her eyes were staring right into me. A cruel smile cut through her face. Oh, look, dearie, it's your big cousin. Her voice was like a song that was being played in another room, slightly distorted from what it should have been. Shannon lifted her head and saw me. Tears were still rolling down her face. Aaron. She whimpered as if she was afraid I wasn't real. I slowly went down the dune with my hands in front of me. I don't want any trouble, I just want my cousin back, I said. I know that, she said in an amused tone. The real question is why? What? I asked, confused. She said you wished you were dead, did she not? She cocked her head in a mocking way. You were the one who wanted her to leave. Shannon looked down, as if ashamed. I felt guilt wash over me. I was angry. I didn't know this would happen. That's how all you humans are. The fairy chuckled. You wanted something bad until you get it. Then you act like you never wanted it in the first place. It's called making mistakes, I said. Will you let her go? I almost asked her to let Shannon go, but I remembered what the hobgoblin had told me. I didn't want to accidentally make a deal I would regret. The fairy got up from her perch and slowly started circling me, looking me up and down like a wild cat stalking its prey. But what if I could give you what you truly want? I was about to question what she meant when I heard a voice I will never hear again. I looked behind me. My heart stopped. She had the same blue eyes and ashy blonde hair I remember. She was smiling brightly at me. For a second I couldn't comprehend what I was seeing. A sob tore through my throat. Penny? She nodded her head. I've missed you so much. I ran towards Penny and hugged her. All the loneliness and grief were melting away. For just a second everything was okay. I'm sorry I left you like that, Penny said. I promise I won't ever leave you again. Now you have everything you want. The fairy's smooth voice cut in again. Tell me, will you give up the girl to get it? I looked back at Shannon. Her mouth was hanging open in shock, staring at Penny. Then she looked at me, and tears started to run down her face. She thought I was about to pick Penny over her, and just for a second I thought I was going to pick Penny over Shannon too. Then I remembered Shannon being so happy and innocent. Her and I playing her little game. I really looked at Penny for the first time. She looked like the Penny I knew, but her eyes seemed devoid of emotion, even if though she was smiling. When I grabbed her shoulders, it felt strange, like if her skin was soft plastic. It wasn't only the physical details that were wrong. The Penny I knew would never allow Shannon to be left in danger. It made me realize the illusion, or whatever was in front of me, wasn't real. Penny was gone, and she wasn't ever coming back. However, Shannon was here. She was real. She needed my help. I had to let go. After taking a deep breath, I said, No, give me my cousin back. It wasn't the fairy that answered, but the fake Penny. What? Why? She seemed genuinely shocked and anguished. I almost reconsidered for a moment. But then I looked into her eyes. It was like looking into a doll's eyes. There was just nothing there. You're not real, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Your Penny's dead. The illusion of Penny grabbed my necklace and pulled it hard. I winced from the pain of the chain digging into my neck. My face was now right next to hers. Her, no, its dead eyes staring into mine. You want me dead? It asked. You were always jealous of me. You're happy I'm dead, aren't you? No, you're not really. I'm the closest you will ever get, it roared. Suddenly a gash opened on the side of its head. I inhaled sharply. A head wound is what killed Penny during the car accident. I turned my head and saw Shannon staring at the fake Penny in horror. I had to stay strong for her. You're not real, you're just a trick. That was more to convince me than anything else. The skin on the illusion got paler, turning to gray and then a sickening brown color. I was horrified to find it was decomposing right in front of my eyes. Why, Aaron? The illusion voice was now distorted and sounded like it was in pain. Why are you doing this to me? I couldn't bear to look anymore. With tears running down my face, I looked behind me to see Shannon and the fairy. Shannon had covered her eyes and was clearly crying as well. The fairy was softly laughing while staring right into my eyes. Pain burst from the back of my neck when the illusion tugged at my necklace with one last great pull. The necklace flew from my neck as the illusion broke apart. With one last cry of my name, I fell to my knees in front of it. Goodbye, Penny, I said softly. Impressive. I turned to see the fairy smiling at me. I didn't think you would refuse. I won your little game, I seethed. Now give me back my cousin. Why would I do that? The fairy cocked her head in mock confusion. I won, I shouted. I just wanted this nightmare to be over. Tell me, little Eve, did I ever say I would let her leave if you refused my offer? I then remembered she never explicitly said she would let Shannon go. The hobgoblin's warnings about the seedy being tricksters rang out in my head again. Maybe you could take her place. The Sita was clearly enjoying herself. I honestly considered it. It was my fault this happened in the first place. Then I thought of one last thing that might save us both. You do this because you enjoy this, right? Is that not clear? The Sita laughed. Really, that's the only reason to do anything. What if you can see this anytime you want? The Sita stopped laughing and looked serious for the first time. Go on. You like seeing humans in pain. Do you know how much we go through every day? So I should leave you and your cousin alone? I can read minds, girl. Just knowing you might deal with strife does nothing for me. The Sita sounded skeptical. No, you should watch, I said. Watch me. Watch all the struggles I'll have to go through. I'll be your own personal, one-woman comedy show. Why? Because life will do things to me that will shock you. I said, it already caused me to lose my sister. It already led me to this nightmare. The Sita looked about like I was more than just a toy for the first time. And that's it. No, you can mess with me all you want. Just don't hurt anyone else. The Sita smirked. You do remember I am the one in control? Why should I listen to anything you say? Because I'm offering something interesting, I said simply. The Sita looked stunned for a second. Then a more genuine smile appeared on her face. Good job, little Eve. I will give you your wish. I nearly cried. I was so happy. I went to Shannon, who was smiling for the first time since I found her. I picked her up and hugged her. It was finally over. Before you go, I need to do one more thing. I turned to see the Sita smiling at me. Dread crept up on me once again. I just need to make sure all the fair folk will know you are indebted to me, she said. What? Before I could ask, a pain I had never experienced before exploded on my back. I fell, bringing Shannon down with me. I heard a scream and took a second to realize it was coming from me. The last things I saw before I blacked out were Shannon's panicked face and the Sita cruel smile. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. My parents were already there and looked like they had been through hell. Turns out, they kinda had been. I and Shannon had been missing for 5 days. I didn't understand at first. I was even more confused when I noticed the bandages on my back. My mom nearly broke into tears when I asked. The story was, Shannon and I were kidnapped by some maniac who tortured us for some unknown reason. We escaped into the woods where I passed out from pain and exhaustion. Shannon had created a fantasy to cope with what happened. At least that's what the doctors said. When I saw Shannon again, she hugged me like she was afraid I was about to disappear. I couldn't blame her. I hugged her back just as hard. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, Shannon cried. It's okay, Shannon. It's my fault too. I shouldn't have been so hard on you. When my parents decided to leave us alone for a second, Shannon turned to me. The fairies. What if they come back? Shannon shook when she said that. It's fine. I made a deal with the Sita. She or any other fairies won't hurt us anymore. The truth is, for a while, I didn't know if it was true. To this day, I wake up in the middle of the night, thinking I heard soft laughter or felt someone's cold eyes on me. I didn't know if that anything I remembered was real. It felt so real But looking back, it did make more sense. It was a strange, trauma-induced nightmare. Plus, it was almost easier to think it was a human who did those things. Humans could be awful, but at least you can understand them. I don't think I can ever fully comprehend what the fairies were thinking. In that way, I wouldn't feel like there were dozens of fairies, always watching. Unfortunately, that thought shattered when I finally saw the scars on my back. It was the night after I got the bandages off my back. I told my parents I didn't want to look at the scars, but really, I didn't want to see it in front of them. They would be fussing over me. While I really did appreciate their concern, it was my scar. I needed to face it alone. So after my parents went to sleep, I took off my shirt, turned on the light, and looked in the mirror. My heart nearly stopped when I saw it. There were 2 large, ugly burn scars on the backs of both my shoulders. There was a thin gap between them. Under each large burn scar, there was a smaller version of it. I started to shake. No, it couldn't be. A butterfly? I whispered in horror. Then, for a brief, horrible moment, I thought I heard hundreds of people laughing at me. No, not people, fairies. I don't know if it was just in my head, or the Cide, who had hurt me and Shannon, was just enjoying the show. But I knew, for the rest of my life, I'll be looking over my shoulder. Deep down, I know the Cide will attempt to harm to me someday. Until then, I'll keep living. That's what Penny would have wanted. It's the only thing I can do.